With the PoE 2 early access launch just 2 days away, all of us have been consuming every bit of knowledge about Path of Exile 2 as the game hype train rockets out of the station. If you're new to the series, this might be confusing now that you've taken in so much information without a proper frame of reference. So in this video today, I'm going to break down what you should expect from the game's structure, what the time investment looks like, and how your character's progression might look. Now, if you're a veteran of Path of Exile and you've been watching everything up to this point, you will find nothing new in this video, and I do not want to waste your time. Please feel free to go ahead and shut down the video. I just want to be transparent. But this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by upfronting the knowledge of my videos. So the down and dirty of what we'll be talking about is that you'll complete the campaign that's available to us in early access in around 25 hours, which would put you at level 45. You'll then repeat the campaign on a sort of new game plus mode called Cruel, which will then place you at level 65, where the end game begins and the true progression starts. All in, you're looking at maybe a total of 40 to 50 hours to go from level 1 to 65 for brand new players. Please keep in mind, this is purely conjecture, and I have nothing to base this off of outside of interviews and statements from the devs on the estimation of time to complete portions of the game. If you're a PoE newbie, but an ARPG veteran, this timeline might look more like 30 to 35 hours. Who's to say? But I wanted to outline how this all looks because I don't think this has been as obvious for people coming to the game outside of the hype that it is kind of just all over the place. Throughout the rest of the video, I'll be talking about expected skill passive points, ascendancy points, as well as selecting your ascendancy class, and the difficulty scaling between acts. But if that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to shut the video down and get back to licking your lips feverishly for the December 6th launch. Quick note. The preload for the game will start 15 hours prior to the 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time launch of PoE 2 on the 6th, so make sure you download the 100 plus gigabyte game ahead of time. But before you head out, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe if this video ended up helping you, as that helps me out in a huge way. And lastly, I'll be streaming this game on my Twitch, where I'll be giving away my extra early access keys, as well as plenty of other stuff on launch, as well as tomorrow. But let's get started here on what to expect from your first 25 hours in Path of Exile 2. Now, before we get started and everything, let me just quickly break down the structure of how the game will work in early access versus how the game will work in release. And again, you can just simply navigate to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters in the timeline below if you already know this section. But in early access, the game the game will have 6 acts, but they decided that, hey, you know what? If we spend so much time trying to perfect acts 4, 5, and 6, we're going to take time away from the end game, which is the true, real, end game of an action RPG. That's a real way that people play it. A lot of ARPGs launch and they don't have a strong or worthwhile end game, so they wanted to focus on that. So for early access, we'll only get access to the first 3 acts, acts 1, 2, and 3 on a normal difficulty. And then acts 1, 2, and 3 will be repeated again on a cruel difficulty is the name of it. For those coming from Path of Exile, you know cruel, you know merciless. And then after that, you will go into the end game. Cruel just simply makes it so that everything is just a little bit higher or harder. They've leveled up a little bit. It's better drops all the way around too. They've said that, there's rewards for fighting at this higher level, of course. And then on release, the game will progress simply from Act 1 all the way up to Act 6, and then you'll hit the end game. The cruel difficulty will disappear. It's only an early access thing. So that's the structure of the game. I wanted to outline that really quick in case you somehow did not know that, and it's that way it makes it easier for me breaking this video down into sections so we can talk about what the rest of the game looks like from this point on. Which brings us into our first conversation of the first 3 acts, the beginning of the game, as it were. Now, you'll be completing the campaign through the first 3 acts, going through the story, dealing with all the things that you'll be dealing with, as well as all the quests. Now, to give us some frame of reference here, in Path of Exile 1, you get roughly 100 skills, and then you get more from the quests that you do during the campaign. So in Path of Exile 2, I'm going to assume that you get roughly the same progression. So let's again assume that that's 120 skill points for Path of Exile 2. So 100 from the levels that you're going to get, 1 through level 100, and then 20 from the quests that you'll do across all the acts. Now, if they distribute passive points evenly over the campaign, then each time you do acts 1 to 3, you should get 10 points. Again, conjecture, I'm going by a previous model. This is all subject to change, but it's to give you an idea of what this is going to look like. Now, they've already said at the end of Act 3, you should be roughly level 45, and it should take you roughly 25 hours to complete the early access Act 1 to 3 campaign. Now, skill point wise, this means that you'll have, give or take, 55 skill points, 45 from the levels, and then 10 from the quests from going from Act 1 to 3. Now, with that too, you have your ascendancy class. They've said how ascendancy classes will work, but just a quick recap on that. Every single one of our classes in the game will have access to 2 ascendancy classes in the early access and 3 total. So when the game launches, we'll have 12 classes with 3 ascendancy classes each. In Acts 1 to 3, you will do a trial to solidify your ascendancy class and then get 2 points to progress that ascendancy class. It will have a total of 8 points that can be invested into it. So once you reach level 45, you will have, just to recap, you will have level 45, completed Act 3, completed the campaign, whatever it is, and have roughly 55 skill points to put into your passive tree, the big, huge constellation, and then 2 points to have put into your ascendancy tree that you've invested into your chosen ascendancy class. That gives you a frame of reference for what it's going to be like to put those first 25 hours into the game. That's the title of this video. That's the kind of end point. But we're going to go further. Let's talk about what it looks like now beyond level 45 and beyond those first 25 hours. And before we jump into that section, let me just say, this isn't necessarily 100% conclusive yet. It's more implied and it seems highly likely. But the way that this worked in Path of Exile 1 and the way that they're probably going to be doing it here in Path of Exile 2 is every time you go from Act 1 to Act 2, 2 to 3, 3 to Act 1 cruel, Act 1 cruel to Act 2 cruel, so on and so forth, you will lose 10% your resistance, right? Just like you play any other action RPG and you jump into difficulty scaling, there's something that will give you a natural penalty to your resistances that you have to stack. So after Act 3, you're going to have minus 30% to your resistance innately built into you as a penalty to act as a difficulty modifier as you go up. So going through the next 3 acts will add an additional minus 30% to your resistances. Again, that's conjecture, but plan to have that be a part of your dealings when you go into the next section of this game, because I don't want you to jump into Act 1 cruel and go, man, this is so much harder. But yeah, it's going to be harder, but you're also dealing with an additional 10% resistance penalty. So keep those things in mind. We don't know how obvious that'll be when we jump from act to act. Like, we don't know if there's going to be an actual pop-up that says, hey, you just lost 10% to your resistance. Keep that in mind. We don't want people to think that, oh, you just clicked the tooltip and it disappeared and you missed it. So keep that in mind as you jump from act to act. Let's go into our next section of this. So now we're in the next 3 acts. Acts 1, 2, and 3 on Cruel, which will go from level 45 to level 65. Now, again, we don't have a true estimation of what the time sink on this is going to be like. For new players, this could be anywhere from 15 to 20 more hours. For an experienced player, it could be maybe 10 to 15. It might be drastically less. In the in the stream, he said that it could take probably half the time once you already know the quests and the campaign, because you're just repeating what you just did on a harder difficulty. So if we're looking at 25 hours, half of that's 12 and a half. That's probably a good little median point that we could look at that would probably be equitable for most players going into this next 3 acts. But with this, you will now progress from level 45 to level 65. And then going from there, you'll also get another 2 points to put into your ascendancy class. So by level 65, you should have 4 of your 8 total ascendancy points invested into your ascendancy class for your class. The latter points will come later in the game, but this gives you a frame of reference now that you have a pretty good investment into your alternate for your main, alternate class for your main, your ascendancy class for your main, but you also have 85 some odd points that you have invested, 65 from your levels and an additional 20 from quests. So This puts you a pretty good way through the projection of your passive tree. You've got 40 points remaining that you're going to get through the remainder. I mean, more than 40, right? But still, the remainder that you're going to get throughout the end game portion and going through that. And keep in mind too, you are going to lose that resistance 10% every time you jump that act. I'm trying to really drum that in as much as I can because I don't want it to be the thing that hinders people from their enjoyment of playing maybe a mercenary or a ranger and they're working on an evasion build, and the second they get tapped, they just explode because they didn't know that their resistance was a -40 because they were in Act 1 cruel, whatever it is. Just keep that in mind because we don't know how. I want to use the word clairvoyant, but that is not the word you'd use in this situation. It's like sometimes you obsess on a word you want to say and it's not right, but we don't know what the transparency is going to be towards you as the player to see that coming up if you're brand new to this series or this game style, this genre, whatever it is. And then after level 65 into level 100, you have the end game. Now, I'm going to do a whole video on the end game and what this entails and all that sorts of stuff, but I just wanted to give you just an idea of what this looks like, how the game is broken up into these 3 stages essentially, and how that's going to change the way you go through this entire game. At this point, you'll have 85 skill points that you'll start into at level 65. You'll have 4 points invested in your ascendancy class. You're going to get those latter 4 points in the ascended trials through the end game portion that you'll put in to finish off your ascendancy class, and you're going to get the remaining 40 some odd points. Again, we don't know if it's 120, if it's 122, if it's 123, if it's 119, however many total skill points. And if they have said it in an interview in between me recording this video and it going live, by all means, let it be known in the comment section below so people can know what exactly is going to change. But the end game too is a real big thing because obviously it's the end game for an ARPG, and that's always fun. But they've really geared the end game to make it so that you can break your build in a lot of really cool ways using all of the many end game systems, currencies, and modifications to weapons, skills, whatever it is you want to do to make your build be pretty destructive without having to be a flavor of the month cookie cutter build that everyone's using. It's a really cool system that they've devised here to try to make it so that you can have the tools to make your build explode and be really, really strong, as long as you want to invest the time to make that happen on the Atlas map and what have you. But that's the breakdown of what Path of Exile 2 is going to play like, just from a game structure standpoint, progressing from level 1 to level 100, and roughly the time sync, as well as the skill point progression, as well as the ascendancy point progression, so that now, when you go to jump into any of these builders, and I'm going to be using Mobalytics, I'm a Mobalytics partner. A lot of the information I've talked about or things that have been relevant to the game, you can find linked below. If you go to those links, it helps me out as a affiliate of theirs. But still, regardless, that's the builder I'm going to be using. There's plenty of other builders out there, PoE2skills.com, stuff like that. If you don't know this game and you don't know how the passive skills and the ascendancy points are going to be invested into you, it's easy to go through all those builders and invest these points and go, oh, okay, cool, I'm going to make the best goddamn guy in the world and he's going to shoot grenades out of his mouth, whatever it is. If you don't understand when those break points hit, when those skill points hit, where you're going to be roughly in the game, it really, I think, damages your building process because you can't properly scale into your build because maybe you have this really good idea for a keystone you want to build into your build that drastically changes a skill, but you've got it set for level like 58, and that's when your character's power spike happens, and it's a slog to get there. This gives you an idea that, okay, well, 58 puts me roughly in the middle of Act 2, in the middle of cruel difficulty with, 50 minus 50% resistance. I don't know if that's going to be a good idea. I'll switch my build around or have a build for leveling that I then switch to in the end game. Now you as the player have the agency to build properly to make it work for the way you want to approach the game. And one closing note here, screw off everything that you keep seeing about best this, best that, best whatever. Play the game however the hell you want. No one knows what is going to be the best. It's early access. Things are going to change within the first 2 weeks of early access. Take your first character, beat the game, get to wherever you want in the game, learn the systems, and then make the character that's broken, and then make the character that you really want to abuse X element or Y mechanic or whatever the hell it is. Approach the game with a little bit of wonder. Have fun with it. You've invested money into it, right? You spent $30 to get your early access key, so play it however the fuck you want. Do not feel like you have to play the way the internet's telling you. I'm hopefully just trying to give you information that gives the framework on how to approach this game versus giving you dogmatic creed on what to do to make sure that you enjoy your free time. But if you enjoy also min-maxing, then fuck off what I say and go min-max. Who cares? But my point remains, though, don't feel shame that you have to play the game a very certain way. They've made it so that it is very approachable to new players and veterans alike, and in a way that it makes it so that you can make a build however you want and have it at least be viable to the point of being able to break it if you want to invest the time and energy in the end game. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. If you have any insight on this that I might have overlooked or that was recently talked about in an interview that I totally missed, go ahead and let it be known in the comment section below. Always down for as much information to be spread out as possible. But thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.